Welcome, everyone. We welcome today our new guests, and this is the second program that we're recording. I would like to welcome Nurul Rakhimbek and Fabrizio Vielmini. Fabrizio is a research fellow, Vision Global Trends, International Institute for Global Analysis, based in Rome. And he's the representative of political party Democrazia Sovrana e Popolare. Also, we have Nurul Rakhimbek, who is political analyst, expert on democracy, and he is former NDI country manager, currently researcher on sanctions and corruption with Eurasian Democratic Alliance. Welcome here, and please tell about yourselves first. Fabrizio, if you can start, please.
Good afternoon, and thanks for your invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you, to see my old friend Nurul, and to have an exchange of view on a number of facts that for me is quite important. I'm very pleased to have this conversation because since the start of this damned war in Ukraine, I've been accused of every kind of sin. My friend Nurul himself called me a racist recently, and everything indeed started from this appellation that he gave me. So I hope to be able today to explain which are my position regarding to this tragedy ongoing and why we are, as a party in Italy, supporting certain positions that maybe in your view are not so consequent and positive, but that's the way we think it should be. Actually, I'm not based in Rome. It's the institute I work with. It's based in Rome. I'm based in Turin, Northwest Italy.
Thank you, Shema. Likewise, I'm happy to be present in our show video that we're shooting right now, and it's my pleasure also to see my friend Fabrizio, whom I know from long ago, from work in Kazakhstan, and we met in other countries too. And of course, views differ. People's views differ, and the basis that we chose to talk today about is from the point of view of democracy. And here's one of the main aspects of democracy is actually freedom of speech, right? So it's one of the main aspects, and that's why freedom of opinion. That's why we will look at the problem today from various corners. And that's about it. And about myself, Gemma, you already did a good job presenting. I did research recently, and I'm still working on it. We have submitted this research on sanctions, how Russia is trying to evade sanctions through Central Asian countries. We have submitted it to the State Department, to the Office for Sanctions, which is quite an important body that traces these sanctions, and also to European Parliament. So that's in a nutshell about activities that I'm involved in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Welcome again. And I need to also present what is the topic of this discussion about, and also I think the first word will be for Fabrizio, since he's our guest, and dive into it right away. The theme of discussion is democracy, as Nurul already mentioned. And the very first question is international democracy. What is it? In your opinion, what are the principles of democracy as a whole, and then international democracy as specifically? And are we bound by it? Fabrizio, if you could talk about it, please.
Yes. Let me take some space for this question, because in a way, you want this to be the main topic, so I explain what exactly I mean for democracy, which are the conditions I'm facing here in Italy, push me to support certain position. In a nutshell, democracy, international democracy, is a beautiful idea that, unfortunately, is quite far away from the current practice of international relations. What we see there in international arena is rather an instrumentalization of this idea for the purpose of power politics. What in Russia is called the collective West, but I prefer personally to call the Anglo-American bloc. I mean, for this Anglo-American bloc, a transnational elite was shaped by the British oligarchy during the 20th century, and which has engulfed as well most of European elite, especially during the construction of the current European institution during over the last 30 years. Relations of power within this bloc are not to no avail, can be defined according to the toolkit that one would expect to be in a democracy. Let me bring example of the country where I live, what I'm citizens of Italy. Italy usually is defined as one of the consolidated members of the club of advanced democracy. In reality, the politics of this country tell us about a quite different situation. We take the last 10 years of the Italian political affairs. We see that two times this country was under a commissioner regime that was dictated by external powers. I mean, in 2011 and 13, we have a former EU Commissioner, Mario Monti. And then in 2021, 22, we had another such kind of government imposed by outside. There was the one of Mario Draghi. No one voted for these persons, and no one wanted them to be leading this country, but they were there. In between, all the same, all the characters that had the government position were rather more than expression of the people were rather the faces, the figurants for an underlying structure of power, which is the one that is dictated by the great international transnational capital. First of all, the Fiat car producer holding that has a lot of ramification, especially in weapon production. And that's the reason why the current government of Ms. Giorgia Meloni is so supportive and proactive in the Ukrainian crisis. Something that most of the people in this country doesn't want to support. No one, the majority of the people doesn't want to send weapons to the war in Ukraine, but this government is engaged full time, 100% in doing this. And so it's very difficult for me to see any sign of democracy in a situation like this. The same, these representative transnational capitals like Fiat, they have the control of the essential of media and the production of the narratives, the mass narratives for the people. So we take Fiat. Fiat is the owner of the JD Media Group. The JD Media Group controls the two main newspapers of Italy. One of the two main newspapers of Italy is La Stampa and the Repubblica. And the same, they have a big participation in The Economist. What suggests that the strict connection that our national capital have with the global Anglo-American elite. Also by way of structures like the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, or the Davos Forum. So this is the quite poor condition of democracy in Italy. When we go to the subject of international democracy, the democratization agenda, what I can see, first of all, is the fact that the USA has invested a lot in turning this democratization agenda into a tool of power, of propaganda of certain ideas. First of all, the dismantling of the system of government, the social protections, and what we saw, especially in a country like Kazakhstan, in other former Soviet countries, where all the guarantees that were there for the working class was completely eradicated. When this country went under influence of the Western country, of the USA, UK, and so on. Regarding the period that we met Nurul in 2005, so I've been quite within the system. I could saw also all these techniques that were employed in the election period. The election became an arena confrontation between different elites. They have very few to share with the real expression of the people. We agree, I think both of us agree on this. But the point is that this electoral field also was exploited as a way to influence the country from outside, and also as a way of destabilize certain elites that were in power, and to try to substitute these elites with other ones. So, in practical terms, everything that is connected to this democratization agenda boils down to an expression of a sort of Western neo-colonialism, suprematism, imposing values and practices that are not an expression of the current life of this country and these people. And that's also the reason why the majority of the peoples in the world, the biggest country in the world, like India and China, are not supporting the Western coalition against Russia, because this is quite very well understood across most of humanity.
Nurul, if you could add also.
Sure. Thank you, Fabrizio, for your view, your examples. In fact, today I was also listening to some news on Facebook, and I think what you said about the government in Italy, the Prime Minister is pushing for supporting Ukraine. And I'm not sure how it works, and I don't remember exactly what the system we have, but if the government is to suggest something, then you can reply later. I mean, I'm just mentioning it as I noticed you mentioned it also. And then the parliament approves it. And the parliament is, of course, selected by the people. I don't know, direct elections or, yeah, probably direct elections. And well, that's one of the principles of the democracy. I mean, if you elect a parliament who approves this, what is going to be helped to Ukraine, then I see elements of democracy there as well. And yeah, I mean, it's a debatable issue. Democracy is always a process. And, you know, there are never like standard approach for every country. There are some best practices in the world for democracies, as I would say. And best practices is something that where people actually have exercised their power of vote, power to influence governments, parliaments. And well, I see Ukraine as one of the steps out of the former Soviet Union republics as a step forward towards democracy, where people actually came to Maidan on the streets and suck out their corrupted government. And yeah, around the elections they wanted to be, and I can judge so because I was present in almost all elections in Ukraine, observing with various organizations, NMO, OSCE, NDI. So yeah, it's like different also views. OSCE is a European organization; they have a more European agenda. NDI it's a also let's say American maybe approach. Anymore, it's a group of Eastern European organizations where mostly people from former Soviet Union are present. So there you go. I mean, combination of views on democracy. And I don't need to remind everybody here or our audience that the main principles of democracy is freedom of speech, human rights. There's been dozens of documents produced around the world by now regulating this international democracy as per se, which is like a Universal Declaration on Human Rights produced by UN, Covenant on Civic and Political Rights, which is, by the way, is also proliferated now in Kazakhstan and other former Soviet Union countries. All sorts of documents, Copenhagen document, which talks about elections, which states free and fair elections, how they should be, universal suffrage, secrecy of ballot. So all those principles. International democracy, I want to view it from a little bit different perspective. We have, as I mentioned right now, views on general understanding about best practices of democracy. But along the way, my political practice, I met a lot of people who are saying that look at this, what is America doing, for example, with the war in Iraq, and it's not democratical, they say. But on the other hand, the leaders from these countries, do they themselves behave democratically? And it doesn't mean that I drive in the direction that one country should be like a policeman of the world. No, I'm talking still about some principles that are accepted, kind principles, nice, beautiful principles accepted by all the nations. And since there's acceptance, they should be like personal obligation, not like somebody pushing you to do this, but personal obligation to follow them. And that's what many Western countries are trying to reinstate. You're not bound to do what we say, but there are principles that you assign to and you agree to, and then it's up to you, of course, to follow. But then we will support you or will not support you. That's the main thing. But if you go violent, like for example in the case with Russia, then of course we will also react in a way that you are doing. You're killing people, you're killing kids, you're killing soldiers, you're annexing land of Ukraine, against all the agreements. Like Budapest Agreement was violated totally, and many other things I can bring as an example. So my point of view, the principles of democracy, international democracy, stays the same, and it is up to the people in the country how to approach and view on democracy. And it goes further down to the public education, civic education, larger civic education. Then people understand this complex, and then they start controlling the authorities. And then the countries produce their point of view in the world. That's how democracy works. It doesn't work from top down. It works bottoms up. So that's what I have to say for the first part of, let's say, our discussion. Thank you very much.